So this is the second part of 1.4, and we left off where we need to explain the commutative property, where the commutative property is just basically with addition, the order in which you add does not matter. So let's say this was 2 plus 3, that's the same thing as saying 3 plus 2, no matter how you add, you equal 5. I could say the same thing with multiplication. So both addition and multiplication are commutative, where you can switch the order around, like 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. Now be careful, subtraction is not commutative. 2 minus 3 is not the same thing as 3 minus 2. The same thing with division. 2 divided by 3 is not the same thing as 3 divided by 2. Now associative is where we tend to throw in parentheses, like writing A plus B plus C. Is that the same thing as adding B plus C first and then A? And this is a true statement. Again, it works for addition, not necessarily for subtraction or division. So multiplication also works. A times B times C. That's the same thing as A times B times C. This is called the associative property. Associative. And then the distributive property uses both, where you have multiplication and addition. Where as you distribute in, we get AB plus AC. And these are multiplication, by the way. I'm aware that you're all familiar with this, but I do have to teach it as part of the curriculum. So just make sure as you're doing the homework you're able to state the differences, because this will be on a quiz or test. You might be given examples and you just have to identify, or I might say, the commutative property says A plus B equals what, and you'd have to write B plus A, things like that. So make sure you're well versed in these words. So in the next one, when they're asking you to use the distributive property in exercise 15, it might seem weird, because as you look at this, you might look at that and say, oh, well, I can combine those terms together to get negative 2x plus 4. You might even look at that and say, oh, that's not very attractive. Maybe I'll write it as 4 minus 2x. Because if you notice, as you switch the addition, adding a negative 2x is the same thing as that. And what they're trying to get you to realize is that you can actually undo the distributive property, and you might be familiar with what's called the greatest common factor, which we will do later this year. And you might be good at it right now, where if you were to distribute 2 times what to give you 4, it would be 2. And 2 times what to give you 2x, it would be x. That's what they're trying to get you to do there. So same thing with the next one. Really, greatest common factor, if you're familiar with that phrase. If not, we'll practice it more down the road, where the y and the z are shared. So yz times what would give you 7yz? You would say 7. And then yz times what would give you 1yz? You would say 1. And that's actually why you get 8yz when you combine things together. I'm not sure if you're well versed in that or not. Now this one I would not worry about. This, maybe I typed this out incorrectly, but there's really nothing to, there's no greatest common factor. There's nothing to do with that. So I'm actually just going to cross out that example. That's a bad one to look at, especially when we're looking at these rules. So exercise 16 is more of the same thing, where they are asking you to combine like terms. So 5pq, you have to make sure that your variables and their exponents are the same, so you can combine them together. So 5 minus 2 is 3 minus 4 would give you negative 1pq. And then negative 11 plus 18 is 7. And for anybody that's curious, you don't actually have to write negative 1. You can just write negative PQ if you'd like. Letter B, they want you to distribute, and in case you've forgotten, because it's probably been a while since you've done the distributive property, minus 2x squared, and negative times a negative makes that plus 12. But I also want you to simplify further because the variables are the same and the exponents are the same. And just do 3 minus 2 is 1x squared. And 7 plus 12 is 19. So make sure you distribute before you combine like terms. This one's very similar. Distribute the negative in there, so that actually becomes plus 2.1x and plus 1.3. And I'm not changing this first term at all. But 3.7 plus 2.1 is 5.8x, because they are like terms, and 2.5 plus 1.3 is 3.8. Feel free to use a calculator and double check that I'm doing my math correctly. This one, and you'll notice sometimes I do goofy things like this, like I ran out of room, so I just put plus 3/4 on the outside. Anyway, 1/5 of 15 is 5. Nope, that is not right. Thanks for checking my work. 1/5 of 15 is 3c minus 5d. Half of 8 is 4c. Notice that the negative is being distributed in there. Negative 3d, and then that would be minus 1/2. I hope you're okay. I'm going to rewrite that as 2/4 though, because as I'm adding to this 3/4, I want the denominators to be the same. So now combine like terms. 3c minus 4c is negative 1c. Negative 5 minus 3 is negative 8d. And negative 2/4 plus 3/4 would be plus 1/4. There we go. So now you should be ready to work on this assignment. And I'm going to stop the video here.